Welcome back, everyone, to the Frosty Canucks podcast. I'm your host, Jason, along with Frosty.
By the power of Grayskull.
All right, and with that...
I know you're going to edit it out again, but there was a good 5-second pause after I said that where you're just like, what the fuck?
I try to predict what the hell you were going to say each week, and every time I'm wrong, so...
I like to think that I can keep you on your feet.
I'm sitting down. Anyway, you wanted to start by shitting on Nintendo. A classic Frosty Canucks move.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone mark that off on your bingo cards. So, this past week, I got treated to the greatest gift of all. Nintendo announced the next SKU of the Switch, and everyone was like, oh, it's gonna be the Pro. It's gonna have better performance. The Joy-Cons are gonna be fixed. Fuck you. That's not what happened. Get that bullshit out of here. In classic Nintendo fashion, instead of doing what everyone expected based on a bunch of fucking rumors, which I don't know how credible they were in the first place, but instead of doing any of that, they did exactly what I would call the most Nintendo thing. They announced a new model that it costs more, and there's fundamentally no big difference between the previous model. The big feature, I think it's called like the OLED edition or something, but the big feature is that it's got an OLED screen, which on a Switch is not going to make a big difference because it's already like a really shitty small screen. It's not a really high resolution, so it's not like if you buy a fucking 60-inch OLED 4K TV for your living room, which will just melt your fucking brain. It's like a tiny fucking 10-inch 720p Switch screen. The other kind of major features that they kind of show, I guess they didn't kind of show off, they did show off in the trailer video, was that they have improved the backstand, so instead of being kind of a flimsy piece of shit.
It really is a piece of shit.
Yeah, I don't like the backstand very much. They now have it set so it's wider and it's got more adjustable heights, which would actually make it more useful. What was the other big thing? Oh yeah, they also have a new dock, which you do not need to buy this model to get the new dock. But the new dock has a LAN. It's got like an Ethernet port on the back of it, so you don't need to buy a fucking USB dongle that has a LAN port. So if you actually play games online and you don't want to have a terrible time, you can have a wired connection now. Kind of. It doesn't go directly into the Switch. It goes into the dock, but it's still better than fucking using wireless. I think that's like all the big things. I'm probably missing like a feature or two off of the list.
Not really. That's the majority of them. Anyway, yeah, people were hoping for that Pro Switch, and nope.
Yeah, not in a million years.
It'll be whatever the next one is. Maybe that's what they news outlets kept thinking that. Oh, this is their new model. It's like, no, it's
a Switch.
That's the
2.
one for 2025. No.
Yeah. I thought this was hilarious, mostly because Nintendo fans always get super disappointed because they whip themselves up into a frenzy over fucking
anything?
Not even anything. They whip themselves into a frenzy over nothing. Like there was no anything. Like just it's a rumor. There's leaks. Oh, this is definitely going to happen, and it didn't happen at E3, and they're pissing and moaning, and then fucking this announcement comes out, and everyone's like, oh, this is it, and it's like, oh, actually no, it's not. There's no performance upgrade. The games are going to run just as badly as they always have.
Mm-hmm.
Third-party developers, indie developers, like all of them are still going to have trouble porting their games to the Switch.
That's the thing that I find like the most disheartening for Nintendo fans is the fact that, the third-party ones, because eventually these games are going to be purely on like the PS5 and the Xbox X series. There's going to be a problem because all of those games will primarily be, I guess, benefiting from the SSD, at least from the triple mindset.
So one thing about that, the fact that the Switch uses those shitty little cards, they load as quickly as an SSD would.
Okay. I didn't know that.
It's all flash memory, and the way that the number of channels that it has available should mean that it would run as quickly as or it should load stuff as quickly as the SSDs would.
Okay, but like the RAM and the processing power, that part will be definitely...
Yeah, fundamentally you're looking at what would a good real world comparison be? Like a Honda Civic versus a fucking like a Mercedes race car. Not like a Mercedes that you'd see on the road, like a Mercedes that would be driven in a fucking, like one of the, like the actual, I don't know what the fuck.
NASCAR?
Yeah, not NASCAR, but like the European driving thing that I can't remember the name of. F1, is that it?
F1? Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be like one of the fucking like Mercedes cars in the F1 versus a fucking Honda Civic that you'd see some like soccer mom driving around in the city. That's the disparity between the hardware here.
Mm-hmm.
Between like the computing power, both in the like raw CPU side and the GPU side. The system memory is so low. That's the big thing that I've seen where some people were like, oh, this indie game looks like it should be great on the Switch. And it's like, why isn't it on the Switch? And I'm like, well, maybe because the developers don't know how to manage only having like a fucking gig and a half of RAM available to them at any given time, which is not a fucking limitation on PC or the consoles like the Nintendo's competing with at the moment.
Mm-hmm. It's just the benchmark is going to go much farther.
Yeah, and
now with the new games and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they do have the cloud thing, and I don't know how well that's actually done for them, but that's always an option because it doesn't matter what the Switch runs like, because when it's running on a server, like the server's running the game, right? So
Xbox gonna come in and save Nintendo with
xCloud,
like, the xCloud
maybe
on Nintendo Switch.
I don't know, maybe
That'll be their partnership.
that would certainly be interesting. That'd be extremely interesting news. I don't know. Fucking this model, I thought it was very funny at the time. I was laughing quite a bit when I saw it because I'm like, man, there's going to be so many salty people after seeing this because, oh, the performance didn't go up and this, that, and the other thing. But they'll still fucking buy all these games on the Switch. They bought the Switch in the first place. They're still going to keep buying games on the Switch. Like, this fucking fact, like, a better model didn't get announced isn't going to stop them from continuing to support Nintendo basically wholeheartedly.
What is a better model? It's just a slightly better model.
Yeah, I did like Megan from Megan Plays Games. Shout out to Judas. I did like her fucking take on it though on Jetstream. She's just glad that I don't have to drop $500 on a better Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is just like a non-issue now. I can just like not have to worry about it. I save my money, just whatever. And I feel like that's what a lot of people who are a little more level-headed are saying with regard to the announcement, right? Where it's like, oh, I guess I don't have to spend money on new hardware because Nintendo's not going to give me something worth actually spending money on.
You know how people are like, oh, I have like my main console, either being the PlayStation or the Xbox, and then I have the Switch for like all the secondary stuff.
Yeah, I've even said that. Like Miranda and I share a Switch, right? Like we both play on PC and then we share a Switch.
But because both systems just released their new generational upgrades, it would be a lot to like be like, oh, now Nintendo needs my money as well for another console.
I actually think that the overwhelming majority of people who own Switches are not exclusively locked on the Switch. Shout out to Ian from Adventure Rules. I know that he's like primarily a Nintendo gamer, but he still has the ability, like he played Dark Deity on his streaming laptop, so he can play some games, limited capacity, but on a computer. And then his wife Des, she's got a PlayStation, so, and I know he's played some games on the PlayStation, so it's like he's not stuck on the Nintendo Switch, right? And then like Megan has a PlayStation as well as a Switch. I think even Jet, he's got like a gaming PC now and a Switch, so it's like almost everyone I know who has a Switch doesn't just have a Switch.
And he had a PS5 until it died.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah. So yeah, like just, there's some validity to saying that most people have a Switch as like a secondary or a supplementary console, or at least in some people, like, in like Ian's case, it may be his primary console, but it's like not his only means of playing games at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't surprised by this announcement at all because I feel like a lot of Nintendo hardware iterations have been like this, where it was like, here's a bunch of inconsequential features, now give us like fucking $400. Do you have any more kind of thoughts on it, Jason?
No. Next meme.
Okay.
You know what? Let's go with Assassin's Creed moving to being a subscription model.
Yeah. Do you remember what episode it was when we were talking about Ubisoft and they're like wanting to move to subscription models? I feel like that was not that long ago, but I have a really bad perception of time.
It wasn't long ago, and with the power of looking it up, I will find out. But in the meantime, so their new game that they're working on is going to be the Assassin's Creed Infinity, because it will be infinite.
Yeah, so the gist here is that they're moving from shitty annual releases to a shitty game that you just play and has new shitty content updates.
Woo!
It's yeah, I don't know. I feel like this well, so here's the thing. Like, I know a lot of people were pissing it, well, not a lot of people. A few people who I saw on my timeline were pissing and moaning about why would you, piss in the well water after you got all of your fans back on board by, taking a break and changing up the formula of the game. And where was I going with this?
Ubisoft makes the same game over and over and over again.
That's where I was going with this.
I assume that's what you were going to get for.
Sorry, I just had a huge brain fart. I just got like a 404 error here. Frosty has stopped working. they put out fundamentally like the same game year after year after year after year. So it kind of makes sense to, if you're just going to use the same framework year after year after year, why not just dump new content and a new setting on top of it every single time? I don't know a lot of people who are super invested in the Assassin's Creed story.
Is anyone?
Yes, there are some people who are, and some of them listen to this podcast. At least with the more modern releases, which is all I'm really familiar with. I'm not as familiar with the older ones, which is usually what people harken back to when they're like, I love Assassin's Creed because the original trilogy had like a great story or whatever. With the newer ones, I feel like the story has slowly been becoming like less and less emphasized, and it's more just like some generic period piece about a character, and then they throw in some Assassin's bullshit. I feel like they could
Yes.
very readily just dump out a new content patch and have it be like, oh, here's the story for this season. Like, you play as fucking Abraham Lincoln and you take on the Templars or whatever who are enslaving black people. And here's a bunch of new missions and it's set in America at slavery time.
And the last sequence is him dying.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that. That's fundamentally, when they said this was what they were doing, I'm like, oh, this makes perfect sense. Like, they already make games where, most of the time you're just doing the same fucking mission over and over and over again. They just put a different coat of paint on it. So, like, why not just have it set so, like, every 6 months or 12 months, you just put out a new content update, and you're like, okay, this is the place we're going to, this is the time period, here's the hero, and fucking have fun. And like, that's it. And then you just pay fucking money and you had the microtransactions in there and you get like a season pass, or you buy like a fucking battle pass or whatever the fuck they're calling it now. Every time a new one of these comes out, and then you get access to the new content. It's great. And if you want to keep dicking around in the open world and doing other things, then you can do that. And if you just want to play through like the story every single fucking year, you just pop in, you play through whatever the new storyline is, and you fuck off after you're done.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, potentially a lot of sense for like the single player, because might even be cheaper for the consumer in the long run.
I don't know how they're pricing this, which is the only thing that I'm kind of like,
It's too far out. I think this is still in the preliminaries, but they're getting like the two teams that are working on the Assassin's Creed games. I think one's Montreal. I'm trying to remember who the other one was.
It's one of their other main studios. I think it's in the tweet. Let me see here. Apparently, they have a studio in Quebec that's not in Montreal, and the two of those are going to be working together. It's both of their Canadian-based studios.
That's what I thought it was, but I wasn't going to say that because that sounded stupid.
Yeah, it does sound stupid, but it's both of their Canadian-based studios are working on it. I don't know where the other one is located, but obviously the Montreal one's in fucking Montreal.
Yeah, because they apparently were switching back and forth, kind of like how Call of Duty does it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how they were able to keep up with the yearly releases and still have a set amount of quality before releasing it.
Yeah. I could see this working fine. I know some people are upset about it, but with the way that these games are, I don't have a very good opinion about these games, which is why when I saw this, I'm like, oh, this makes perfect sense, because these games are just full of homogenous, copy-pasted content, so it makes sense that they would just want to dump them into a fucking live service and milk the shit out of people who are willing to continue playing that for indefinite amounts of times and just say fuck it to the people who aren't.
I mean, that's how it works for Destiny.
Yeah, and if they're smart about it, like I said, they can have a thing where they get to fucking get the single player people as well, because it can just be like, oh, you just pay for like whatever the new thing of content is, pop in every year around the same time, play the new storyline, and then fuck off. Kind of like people who do like a month of World of Warcraft. Whenever the new expansions drop, they play through the new expansion content and they leave.
Yeah, they take their vacation and then do that. I had one person at work who did that.
There's other games that are like that work off of that kind of a seasonal model, where when they put out new content, a bunch of people will play for a little bit, and then afterwards, like it kind of goes back to like the normal population of people who play it. So yeah, I don't know. I could see this working.
Yeah, no, I could see that too. I just hope they don't dump everything into all these subscription models, otherwise it will get a little bit too much.
I don't care because I don't play Ubisoft games, but and I don't think that'll ever change. I really don't like the games they put out. I think they're all trash.
From what I saw on the thread, they were like saying like, oh, it might have the ability to be like small games and then like or smaller worlds and then like the bigger worlds. So maybe there'll be something finally for you where it's small enough where it's not like, oh god, it's just look at Assassin's Creed Unity and go, oh god, that map. Have you ever seen what the Assassin's Creed Unity map looks like?
Yeah, I have.
You look at all the collectibles and you just go, what the fuck? Where do I start?
The thing for me is, like, it's not just the size of the world that bothers me in those games, it's the fact that the content is so boring to do. There's
Fair
so
enough.
much
Yeah.
shit, and it's not, I'm not saying
Repeat.
shit as, like, as a substitute for stuff. I'm saying shit as in it's literal shit. Like, the content is garbage. It's not worth doing. It's not worth my time. For me, Ubisoft is peak open world design, where it's just like the map is filled with content that isn't worth doing. The game has nothing original to show me. It has nothing original to, like, for you to play. It's not very fun. So yeah, I just get bored as hell of those games very quickly. And then I'm like, well, okay, then I can play through the story, and the story is just the most inoffensive fucking like white bread bullshit. And oh god.
You must kill that man. He is bad because he has done a bad thing to a child. Kill
Or
him.
just like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I've only played Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and the fucking protagonist in that is the biggest fucking dickhead in the world.
He is.
Fucking, how am I supposed to get invested in this guy when his whole thing is like, I hate people because I'm poor and I'm in the, like, the time period where, I mean, we're kind of getting back to that time period now, but like, I'm in the time period where being poor means that my life is terrible and everyone around me is like living a better life, and I hate this. I feel like I'm entitled to have a better life. And that's his story. And I'm like, well, that's not relatable at all. You're just a fucking dickhead. Like, you're not even willing to work for your living. You just want to go and steal someone's fucking shit and then have a great life. Like, what the hell? I guess that fundamentally outlines the difference between my fucking set of values and this carrot and, like, most of the world's, but whatever.
That's just what the billionaires and the Wall Street guys do now.
Yeah. So in the first area, I was like running around doing the content, and I'm like, oh, this is like okay. And then when I went to like the next part of the map, it was the exact same thing in that part of the map. I'm like, why? What the fuck? All of the missions are exactly the same. And then I went to the next part of the map, and it was like, oh, all the missions here are the same. I'm like, is this really the entire game?
Yes. Copy and paste past it.
Yeah, basically. There's 3 fucking missions, and they paste them all over the map and call them different missions. And it's like, well, this is fucking, no wonder they can put out one of these every year.
I mean, most of the time it's just spent
making the world look and feel authentic. Yeah, it's the people who make the actual like worlds, they do a great job. Visually, they're always really impressive. The amount of moving parts in them is really cool as well. But I don't know, the fucking set dressing isn't enough to sell me on a fucking game. Sorry.
Well, for you, it's definitely gameplay over.
100% of the time. Although I can be won over into thinking a game is better than it is if it has a really good soundtrack.
Fair enough. Assassin's Creed is not known for that part.
No. Although my favorite part of that game, Black Flag, was being in the ship and then sailing around the ocean and then having them sing the shanties. Yeah. We're just like going from like point A to point B. I was just like navigating myself with like I looked at the map and it was like, okay, I want to go here. And then I like figured out what was involved for that. And I started navigating by like sight and just like not having like opening the map at all to get to where I was going. Yeah, I had them singing the fucking shanties the entire time, and I was like, "This is the greatest part about this game."
Yeah, a lot of people will say that like Black Flag was the peak, and then everything went down from there.
God, if that was the fucking peak, holy shit!
Syndicate, and then I think with the combat change from like Origins, Valhalla, and Odyssey, I think it kind of has gone up a little bit since then. But yeah, definitely, I feel like a lot of people thought that was the peak because there was just the ship mechanic.
You can spend half of the game not playing the bullshit part of the game.
Yeah, and that's why like I think Ubisoft's making that like Skull and Bones
that
game.
Game's never
that
fucking
keeps
coming out.
Pushed.
Holy shit!
It's vaporware.
It's vaporware. Fuck that noise. That game's never coming out.
That sounded like a perfect game for like the live service stuff too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just have different seasons, have different like maps for the ships to fight on, or whatever you do in that game now. I don't know. It's probably changed since then.
Yeah, I don't even know what the fuck that game is even supposed to be. I feel like also
pirate fighting simulator, booty.
Yeah, well, I feel like just what you described there is tits. What's that game from fucking Rare called? Sea of Thieves?
Yes, Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, I feel like Sea of Thieves coming out and then like gradually improving was like kind of took the, you know, pun intended here, took the wind out of Ubisoft's sails. Because I feel like that's kind of what they were going for, but fucking Microsoft just completely beat them to the punch. If they came out with like the exact same game, I don't know if a ton of people would even buy into it, because it's like, oh, we've literally just seen this game. Microsoft put this game out already.
Yeah, and that game's on Game Pass permanently, so
yeah,
tough sale.
I feel like it would be. So I don't have anything else to to say about this after I fucking shat on Ubisoft sufficiently. This is a good podcast so far. I've shit on Ubisoft. I got to shit on Nintendo.
Anything else you want to shit on?
Well, we said we are going to skip the Sony topic that I kind of pulled out, but no. We're going to move into something a little bit different. So I've had this kind of in my back pocket for a couple of weeks now, but as like a filler topic because we didn't know if there'd be enough news, but then we kept talking for a fucking hour with the news related stuff, so we haven't done this yet. By the time this podcast is going to be going out, we've been through 6 months of the year so far. I wanted to ask, what are your top 5 games so far of the year so far that you've played?
It's a top 5 list.
Kinda, yeah. Now, having said that, I haven't actually looked at my games and actually figured out what they are yet. I know I had some from the last time I asked about this topic, but I've played some other stuff since then, so I don't know if my opinion's probably changed.
Fair enough.
So yeah, if you want to go like back and forth, because I know there's a few on here that I could very easily pull off immediately and be like, yeah, that was a game that was really good.
Okay. No particular order.
Yes, of course.
Dark Souls Remastered. I enjoyed the hell out of that, even though I think it was still a bit more clunky, and I actually am having a bit more fun with Dark Souls 3. I'm not done with it, so I can't say if that's on the top 5. I've learned my lesson from the Yakuza Like a Dragon episode.
Yeah, where you're like, this is really good, and then like you hit the point where it stopped being really good.
Yeah, I need to actually finish the games before I put them on the list. That's a requirement. Bottom 5, if we ever did that, would be really easy, because then just anything that you hated with a passion.
That's just it. Like, whenever it's just side tangent, it's completely, well, somewhat related, but like, anytime I recommend a game to anyone, I have finished that game. I will not recommend a game if I haven't finished it. And for games that like don't have an ending, I have sufficiently played it to the point where I could tell you a shitload of stuff about the game. That's typically what I will not recommend something if I cannot finish it, because if I can't finish it, then that means that if it wasn't good enough to be finished, then I don't think that it's worth recommending. But then for don't play this game, oh fuck, it doesn't matter how much I've played the game for. Or I have to play the entire thing because I had an editor at that time who demanded that I play the entire fucking game. Grimshade was terrible. Anyway, is it my turn to go? Because you said Dark Souls?
I did say Dark Souls.
Okay. I'm going to go with, let's see here, no particular order, so let's go with the safe ones. It Takes Two. It Takes Two is fantastic. I think that's probably going to be one of the only games that actually came out this year that's going to be on my top 5 right now, and maybe even on the top 10 at the end of the year.
Yeah, you've been saying there's been a problem this year for games that have resonated with you.
Yeah, there's just not been a lot of stuff coming out that really, I was sold on the premise of it, so I've been playing a lot of stuff from the past few years. In a few years' time, I might have gone through every of the millions of releases that come out on Steam and have found some of the stuff that came out this year that I'd actually be interested in. But as it stands right now, It Takes Two is something I played this year that I actually really enjoyed. A big part of why that was entirely came down to the fact that the game was paced so briskly and it had so many different mechanics that it was throwing at the players. So it ended up being like really, really fun to play through with Miranda. There wasn't a whole lot of times where like either of us were stuck doing kind of the same thing for too long. That was pretty fun. And across the entire, I think it was about, let's say it was about 10, 12, 13 hours. There was only like one level in the entire game that both of us thought were like, oh, this level's kind of lame. I wasn't huge on the story. There was parts of it that I was like, this is pretty good storytelling for reasons like the part where it made me cry. But I have a few problems with the way that the story was told and the way that the characters are characterized, but that's neither here nor there. All around, it's pretty good. Your turn.
Getting back to the Ubisoft thing, we talked about that in mid-May.
Oh, yeah, so it wasn't that long ago.
But anyway, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard.
Ah, yes, the one that you made me buy.
Yes, the one that you'll have to play eventually.
Yeah, I hope I enjoy that.
I hope you do. It is just so much fun because the setting is really good. Sort of the villains, the bakers, are really entertaining and like interesting as like you're trying to escape them. Some of them like acting as just these monsters that you just cannot get, like you have to run away from them. So it's not like you can fight your way through it. Like you can stun them, but you have to just be clever. You need to hide, you need to do stuff to get around them. Playing my Madhouse playthrough, I'm about halfway through now. It's a lot of fun. It's tough, and because it's changed everything around, including like where like items are and stuff like that. Yeah, it's added a lot more to my. This game is really short to play, so I've played the main campaign 3 times.
Oh, wow.
First time being like 7 to 8 hours where I was taking my time, and then like it was 3.5 hours for my next one and 3 hours for the following one. And I was doing some trophy related.
That's because that's trophy cleanup then, isn't it?
One's for like a speed through, and then the other one's for like don't use the item box for the entire game. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like an interesting one. Where the fuck is that backpack upgrade? I need to grab more shit.
Okay.
The other 2 playthroughs were on easy. It's a lot of fun. I'm glad that this game exists, because without it, we didn't get Resident Evil Village and the resurgence of Resident Evil being like a franchise that people are really happy and excited about. Because with the decline from 5 and 6,
oh yeah,
especially 6,
yeah, especially 6,
there with the direction that Ubisoft,
Capcom.
Capcom was taking at the time, going like the super action focused. I'm glad that they've kind of dialed it back. Even if Village is more of the action, but it's like kind of
campy,
reminiscent of Resident Evil 4, which is the one that people really like.
Yeah, it's got the campy action.
Yeah. You know what? And also / just add in Resident Evil 4 in there as well. Just Resident Evil as the franchise that I've played so far.
Yeah, you've been playing a lot of Resident Evil this year.
Just catching up on them. 4 is really good too.
Okay, is my turn next?
Yes.
Just making sure you were actually done there. So yeah, one of the ones that you had as your one of your best games from last year, Hitman 2. Game's fucking good. It's really fucking good. I'm glad that your praise for the game convinced me to play the sequel, because I'd played Hitman.
And that didn't gel with you.
Yeah, it didn't gel with me a whole lot. I feel like in the time between when I played that and now, I've spent so much time playing roguelikes. Everybody mark your bingo cards. That when I went back to, like, when I returned to it to play it, Hitman 2, I played it more like I was playing a roguelike. So this is each kind of time I was playing through the level, I just like went through the levels. I didn't use saves a whole lot, and I was just like, okay, what kind of crazy shit can I do? How can I, solve certain problems? Working through the mistakes that I made things way more interesting. And there's a ton of times like I just went through a bunch of the levels so much that I became really intimately familiar with them. Not all the levels in that game are constructed equally, but the ones that were good were really good. And those were the ones I spent the most time with and had the most fun with. So I am really looking forward to getting to play 3. I know it's out on PC, but it's on Epic, and I have 1 and 2 on Steam. And if you have all 3 of them in the same spot, you can play through all 3 of them on it downloads and installs all of them at the same time. So like once I finish 3, going through the levels repeatedly, I want to do the entire game start to finish, no saving. Master difficulty, just try and beat the levels. Don't worry about the score, don't worry about doing any crazy kills, just fucking the whole game, master difficulty, no saving, get through, and don't die. And I think that would be really fun to do from start to finish, as a complete campaign, as a kind of a final send off to the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy. Because yeah, those games are actually phenomenal. I just didn't have as much of an appreciation for the way that they're designed and the way they're meant to be played when I originally played Hitman in whenever the fuck I played it.
It was kind of a different way of them doing the games.
I feel like 2...
doing the episodic and then doing the...
Yeah, I feel like 2 also just generally improve... they improved some of the problems that existed in 1 with 2.
Well, they gave you all of it, and then they gave you the DLC later if you bought that.
Yeah, well,
that kind of helped.
I meant mechanically, they toned down the assassin vision, which was way the fuck too powerful in the first game. So they made it less OP in the second game, which meant that you could use it without just ruining the game for yourself.
I didn't know that.
But you could see your everything through the fucking walls in the first game.
Okay.
I think they've changed that in as a retroactive patch because they it wasn't as powerful in 2. They kind of struck the right balance with the settings that are on by default in 2. So yeah, it's a really fun game.
Yeah, one thing that's really annoying is that they've got the elusive contracts, and so that makes you want to buy it.
Fuck that. No, I don't care about that. I'm playing the fucking levels over and over again, and then after I'm done, I'm kind of done. I don't care about doing the elusive contracts, even though that's kind of the big, this is the proof that you've actually done things. I'm just going to go through the entire game once at the end as proof that I've figured out how to play the game.
Fair enough. Celeste. That was next on my list.
Boy, good game.
A very good game. I'm glad that I picked that up. I have actually from the Palestine bundle. I think I have a copy of that on PC now, so I could play it there as well. Not that there's really any difference between console and the PC version, from what I could tell, because it is simplistic in its design.
Yeah.
So not graphically.
No, it looks like a NES game.
Yeah. No, it tells a wonderful story with Madeline trying to overcome the mountain, which is kind of symbolizes her struggles. So I can kind of relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. So, and the designs of the levels they're all well designed. They all introduce new mechanics every so often that changes up how Madeline just scoots around the entire map. It's not punishing at all because as soon as you die, you're back in the level because it's
extremely generous checkpoint system.
And the thing I love about the strawberries and the collectibles is that you don't really have to go after them. They're just extra bonuses. So if you find something too difficult, you can just move on and finish the level.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second there. I really liked them as well because they act almost like a choose your own difficulty setting, right?
Yeah.
Because they always, if to get a strawberry, it's always more difficult than if you just go through the level without getting them. So it's almost like you get to choose if you want to play on like easy mode or hard mode based on going to get the strawberry. And then like, yeah, it's not like a hard thing. It's like you get to choose when you're doing the level if you want to do it or if you just want to leave it behind.
Great game. Hope to see more from them later. And yours?
Guess I'm going to go with... Alright, not everything I've played is on this list. Them's Fightin' Herds. I haven't gotten to a point where I consider it finished, so it's not actually on my finished games list.
Oh, it's in the 100-hour Chad.
It's almost there. I'm at just under 80 hours of total playtime.
Alright.
So yeah, it's really fun. I have enjoyed picking up a new fighting game. It's got a bunch of things that I was not taught or familiar with from Fantasy Strike. There's been a lot of learning with that, but it did finally push me to get an arcade stick, and I'm having a lot of fun using that because it's just like a controller that actually is big enough for my hands to use comfortably.
Your behemoth.
Yeah, my fucking giant alien hands. And yeah, it's just like, it's a very fun game. It's got a ton of the features that fighting games should have, and for some reason, indie developers are putting all of these features in their games, and the AAA developers are just like, fuck this, and the AAA developers still get a shitload of sales because marketing is fundamentally the only thing that matters when you're selling a fighting game, which is bullshit, but that's the truth. That's why I like Smash sells so well, is because it has a bunch of characters, and people are like, oh, this is my favorite character, so all you gotta do is put a trailer out showing like this character X is in this game, and people will buy it.
It's Pyra.
Yeah, exactly. The netcode is extremely good. The lobby system is amazing. I wrote a post that I'm still in the process of editing that should be up before this podcast is. If it's not, it'll be out shortly afterwards. Plug about the combo trainer in this game, which does a bunch of things that other games do not do and they should be doing. The way that juggles in this game work is very interesting. The character designs are extremely expressive. Just the way that the characters look and the way their moves function is really, really interesting as well, because obviously they're all fucking four-legged creatures, so how do you have a game where they're punching each other? Well, this game makes it work without it being like a bunch of the Doge memes, like Fight of Animal. And then like the other thing is that it like works perfectly fine in like windowed mode, full screen. Doesn't have any trouble reading various different controllers. One thing I just found out is that apparently Guilty Gear Strive, if you plug in your controller after you start the game on PC, it doesn't recognize your controller, which is mind-boggling. That doesn't happen in Them's Fightin' Herds. In Them's Fightin' Herds, I don't even need to have the window doesn't even need to have focus, and it still reads the inputs from my arcade stick. So I can have like,
funny.
I can be talking with somebody, typing in Discord, so the window doesn't even have focus, and I can still fucking like type in Discord and then like play the game. Obviously I'm not doing those two things at the same time. It'll be like in between rounds, I'll like type out a message and then send it. Or like one time Chives came to my fucking desk and like started clicking my mouse all over the place, and I was still able to finish up a match because it kept reading the inputs still.
Of course you did.
Yeah, she's a little shit burglar. It's a phenomenal game. I know that people are going to be put off by the art style because I was put off by the art style. And yes, there are people who play the game who are 100% that really gross, like the gross brony stereotype, that there are people playing the game who are like that. Some of them are very nice and they're very easy to interact with. Others are exactly as awful as you think they would be. But generally speaking, almost all my interactions with the community, like all of my direct interactions with people in the community have been positive. People who you're going to actually talk with are usually pretty great, and then the game just has like a ton of things that like every fighting game should have, and I don't understand why this indie game that costs like $15 is kicking the shit out of everything else. Like everything that a fighting game should have is in this game. If you're interested in fighting games, you should give it a shot. It's a really, really good quality game. Pass it back to you for number 4.
Sayonara Wild Hearts.
I was wondering when this one was going to come up. That's like the only game that you've ever like replayed without it being like consecutive replays, which is like, to my mind, that's like a true replay, is when you come back to a game after you've put it down because you want to play it some more.
Yeah, no, it's the perfect runtime of like, once you know like how the levels work. Well, like it takes about 1 hour. I have to get gold on every level in order to unlock this YOLO mode, which is basically just you don't get any saves for play the entire game. If you die once, you have to restart. And like having it as an hour makes it a little bit more doable than like doing let's say like that one life thing like in Deathloop. I don't know if I'd enjoy Deathloop because I'd be like, oh, all that effort I put in and I've like died. But I think Bethesda will probably have some systems in place that will alleviate some of that. Yeah, no, it's a perfect runtime. I love that. The music's catchy because really it is. It's just like they kind of just designed it as like kind of like a pop like music sort of album.
Isn't it like an album that you play a video game over top of?
Pretty much, yeah. Enough of it's varied, so like you're not running into the same thing. It's not like 15 songs of country music where I'm just gonna bash my head. I can't stand country music.
Sucks dick.
It's the worst.
Sorry, listeners who like country music, you're wrong.
No, not sorry. No, you're wrong. Anyway, no, I despise country music. My mother loves country music. I despise that music.
Of course she does.
Yeah, of course she does.
Fucking hell. I didn't know that, but I could have guessed that.
At family functions, she's avoided playing that, but
it's because everyone would tell her to turn that shit off.
Probably.
Or enough people would, anyway.
Enough people. Yeah. Sorry, and memorizing like the levels and like what's coming up, because each song's maybe at most 4 minutes, maybe pushing 5 for the odd one. Yeah, no, it's really good. I enjoyed it, and as you had said earlier, it's one of the few games that I've replayed once afterwards just for fun. And I'll probably replay it near the end of the year to refresh myself when we do our end of the year discussions. At least that is the plan.
Yeah, that's absolutely going to happen at some point. So cool. Is that over to me now?
Numeral 4.
This is the part where having thought ahead more would have been advisable.
Dark Deity.
No.
Plug for your article.
Yeah, plug for the article I wrote. Go read the review I wrote. You'll find out why it's not on the top 5. Fucking...
It tried to be on the top 5.
Yeah. Fuck it. I guess I'll go with Honey Pop 2, Double Date.
That's fair.
I unironically love Honey Pop and Honey Pop 2. They're fantastic match 3 games. Some of the best, in fact. I think I said this before. Maybe I didn't, but I originally played Honey Pop because a buddy of mine bought it for me as like a fucking, like an ironic joke. Christmas gift.
Booby game.
Yeah, he's like, booby game. Enjoy, Steve. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, it'll be a booby game, whatever. So I like played it, and I was like, this is actually like really fun.
Yeah, you were one of the two groups. You were in the match 3 loving or boobies.
I mean, technically I'd be in both, but yeah, no, I had a lot of fun playing through that game, and Honey Pop 2 is like the perfect sequel. I know that not everyone feels that way because the complexity of the game went through the fucking roof, but I love the fact that they took like what was already kind of on the complexity scale is a little bit more complex than the average run-of-the-mill match 3 game, and the developer found a way to make it even more involved, so you had to think really far ahead on a lot of your moves, and that made the act of actually playing the board really compelling. I wasn't as big on the dating sim aspect. I feel like the dating sim aspect was, at the time I thought it was kind of shallow, but then I went back and I thought back about how I replayed the first game before I played the second one, and I was like, actually no, it's kind of shallow in both of them. So yeah, I was kind of like, that's fine. But yeah, the area I wanted to see the kind of big improvement, or not big improvements, but the area I was hoping that there'd be improvements in, which was the match 3 side of the game, and there was. So yeah, it's like one of the best match 3 games on the market. You need like some galaxy brain strats to finish some of the levels, and I thought that was fun as hell. Highly recommended, although keep in mind that it is a booby game, and there is some like incel kind of offensive shit in the game as well. But you can skip through most of the dialogue and just play the booby puzzles instead, and that's all you need.
Wasn't like the difficulty settings like Chad, Incel, or
Yeah, I need to go back through
something
and
like
do
that?
an incel run of the game. Incel basically it starts you off at like you lose like all of the beginning tutorial like easy shit at the beginning and you start off like right where the game starts and you don't have any of the tools that you normally have at that point in the game. So it's much harder to play through the early game and then by the time you get to the later game it's the puzzles are even like they're harder than they would be by the end of the base game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I didn't know exactly what they meant with the hard mode thing until after I played the game and was like, oh, okay, that means like this certain thing is just disabled for most of the or is enabled. Some things are disabled and some things are enabled. So some things are disabled at the early part of the game and some things are enabled much earlier than they would normally be, which makes the game much more challenging. But yeah, I still want to play through the game again at some point and do it, play through it on hard, which will fucking probably cause my brain to turn into goo and come out my ears, but it's really good. But again, there's like some very content warning. There's some absolutely like I'm saying this right. Like there's some stuff in there that is going to offend some people because I heard it and I was like, that probably shouldn't be in here.
I guess not.
I don't want to have to put a content warning on our podcast, so I'm not going to say specifically what it is, but just know there's like some racial stuff and there's some very negative opinions about specifically the T and the LGBTQ plus that I don't know if it was necessarily intentional, but there's some very problematic things that are said about a certain group of people, two different groups of people in some of the game's dialogue, which is the only thing that kind of makes it a little bit hard to recommend. Like from the gameplay wise side of things, it's really good, but yeah, there's that, which is kind of like, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Last on my list is A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Ah, yes.
One of the few games where the escorting is not nearly as annoying because you have appropriate tools to handle the situations. So, and it's a bit more compelling because it's not like, oh, this is a stranger I have to protect because game. It's like, oh no, it's essentially your brother, or it is your brother.
I thought it was your
game,
brother.
So. Yeah, words. Shush. Anyway, yes, it's your brother, so you're protecting him throughout that. It's nice that this game has had enough success with its first one so that there's now a sequel in the works. And if you have the PS4 and I believe also the Xbox copy, there is an enhanced version on this generations of consoles, so the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So, and that's for free.
The way it should be.
The way it should be. Not like Yakuza Like a Dragon.
Or numerous other games.
So, yeah, it's a good game. Really only have like stealth is necessary for the beginning portion, and by the end, as long as you're looking for all the resources, you can kind of go crazy with the combat instead. You don't have to play nearly as defensively if you don't feel inclined to. So, a breath of fresh air after the beginning portion where it's like, oh, I have to be really stealthy. Well, I don't have to be because now I can get the rats to eat the guards and blah, 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 blah. And lots of rats.
Lots of rats. King of the rats.
Anywho, your fifth one.
So remember when I originally brought this up and I'm like, man, I can't even choose like a fifth game. I have a fifth game now. I just don't know which one to choose from. There's two games I played recently, and I'm going to talk about both of them later. So I guess I'll just throw both of them out as like a tie for fifth, because I am going to talk about both of them later in the podcast, this episode. So enter the Gungeon and Deep Rock Galactic.
I've heard of one of those, not the other.
Yeah, so I've played about 15 hours of both of them over the last 2 weeks. I've had a lot of fun with both of them for very different reasons. I could very easily see both of the games making it to my end of year list.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Gungeon was one I actually was very resistant to play for a really long time because it's hard as fucking shit.
It is.
But I'm having a lot of fun with it regardless. And then Deep Rock Galactic is one that I was kind of interested in for a little bit once it released out of early access. But I didn't think I would have anyone to play it with. Because like I used to play games all the time cooperatively with Will. And now he plays Eve all the time. So getting his time to play games is a little bit harder. But I started playing more games cooperatively with Miranda instead. And this is a game that actually lets both of us play in ways that we find enjoyable. And allows us to like successfully get through missions, which I'll get into a little bit more when we actually get into the games we've been playing.
But yeah, they're both very good games for very different reasons, but they're both very fun to play. So yeah, I'll keep that as like a kind of a cop out. So yeah, there we go. That's like where we're at midway through the year. I have one game from this year, and Jason had 0. But
That's this year is not going well.
I mean, I've only played like, let me see here. What games have I actually played that came out this year? For games that I've actually played that were released this year, Honey Pop Double Date. Oh, actually, Honey Pop 2. That was from this year. So actually 2 games from this year. Loop Hero, which I wasn't big on because I thought it was really artificially grindy. I think
Near the end,
Mail Mole was actually released this year, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Alba, a Wildlife Adventure, I think was released this year, but It Takes Two was, Cozy Grove was, and Dark Deity was. So that's what, like 7 games of the almost 40 games I've played this year?
Something like that. I have none.
If you got one, I would be very surprised with the way you play games.
Fair
Which
enough.
is to say that you wait until they're like on sale aggressively. If fucking Rise had come out on PC though this year, though, holy shit, that would have been like Game of the Year, Monster Hunter Rise.
Yeah, now it's Game of the Year next
Yeah, it's
year.
gonna be one of the fucking top 10 next year, top 5 next year.
Something else would have to really
It'd have to come out and not.
come out next year.
Well, it'd have to
and
come
then
out
be
and
like,
be. It'd have to run like shit. That's it. If it came out and it ran like shit and they didn't fix it, then that would be enough.
and it'd be on the 2 spot. Just to spite.
No, Monster Hunter World was only on the 5 spot, but I feel like I grew to enjoy that game more and more the longer I played it. Anyway, one final topic that I wanted to cover for this week. Actually, should we bump that to next week looking at the time?
We should yeah.
Okay. I'm going to acknowledge the fact that we spent too long on the previous topics, and Maz, the topic that you brought up, I'm going to do a little more research, and we will cover that the following episode, even though I said that the previous episode, but I will get to it eventually. Thank you.
1 month
Thank
later.
you for,
Sorry.
yeah, well, fucking thank you as always for supplying
It was
stuff.
E3. That's why.
Yeah, well, it's like a very interesting topic, and I think there's a lot of things we can dig into. It's just I haven't done as much research, so it'd be a lot of off-the-cuff stuff. But
And I've had 1 day with the question.
it's not so much a question as it is a topic, but it's a very interesting topic that you guys will get to listen to. Not this episode, obviously, but like next episode.
It will be first thing next episode. Now that all the news and discussions out of the way, let's get into the games we've been playing. I only have 2 because my wife decided that for her vacation we were going to go camping, and I didn't really bring much to play camping-wise, so...
Well, where did you go camping?
Her parents' backyard.
I assume that they have a very large plot of land.
They do, out in the country.
Yeah, I don't know. Whenever I go like camping, it's actual camping, so like you sleep in a tent camping, and I usually spend most of the time not around technology, so I wouldn't have necessarily a huge problem with that. But it's been a while since I've gone camping. I don't know if I could do it anymore without destroying my back, because like after the lung surgery, I find that anytime I'm like even a little bit weird on my back, it's just like I just die.
Just dead?
Like just dead. Entire body just fucking gives up. It's gross.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
Yeah, the body already hit the floor. That's why it's in pain.
Are you recording on the floor?
But no. I mean that's when you're camping. Yeah, whatever. Never mind. So yeah, I guess that means I start this week, doesn't it? Because I have 3.
Yeah, you got 3. Back to you.
Big Pepe.
Remember, wait. Remember, you have to end on the shittiest game, unless you don't have a shitty game.
I mean, so I don't want to talk
In which
about Dark Deity last.
All right.
So yeah, another plug for my article. We're gonna end on a high note this time. Fuck y'all. Dark Deity. So I
Tradition.
picked up Dark Deity. I had like a launch discount. So yeah, after Ian kind of brought up that it was like Fire Emblem, but it's substantially lower price, that was enough for me to go, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I picked it up on Steam. He had a I'm not going to say a very positive experience. Based on his review, he had a fairly positive experience with the game. Overall, I did not.
Now, the last Fire Emblem game you played was Awakening, right? In like the chronological order of releases, right?
I mean, Awakening is the only Fire Emblem game I finished.
Okay, fair enough.
So like I've played Awakening, and
You've not played Three Houses, right?
No, God no. Holy shit, no. Fuck, that game has so much Persona-esque bullshit. I could not get through that game. There's no way. My 2 buddies who really love JRPGs could not finish that game, so there's no way I could finish it. There's no fucking way I could finish it. Well, actually, that's not true. I think Chris finished it, but he only did 1 playthrough, and he was like, fuck this game, and Will didn't even finish it once.
Jeez.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Meanwhile, Ian's on his
12th
8th playthrough soon.
Yeah. I was hoping that it would be an improvement on Fire Emblem because, every time an indie team is inspired by a game, they have the opportunity to, because they're not constrained by series expectations. So they have the ability to be like, oh, we're going to make massive sweeping changes and then redesign the game around those changes. And there is some massive sweeping changes in this game. But my big problem with the game is that it doesn't account for those massive sweeping changes. It just changes the one thing and then goes, this is good enough. Which is fucking stupid.
That's too bad.
The big change from Fire Emblem is that there's no permadeath. And I fundamentally don't have a problem with the removal of permadeath from the game because that can be pretty frustrating. You're pretty far through the campaign. You've got your core group of heroes, and then one of them gets critted with that 3% crit and just gets deleted. And you're like, well, fuck, now what do I do?
But that's a problem that they've resolved with future Fire Emblems, have they not? That's an option?
Kind of. You can disable that from being an option in every game from Awakening forward. And then I think that they did it a little bit better in Echoes, which I played through part of but got really bored of because the map design in that game is awful. And that's that you have this time sphere thing that you can reverse, that you can go back in time with it, I think once per map. So if anything truly devastating happens, you can be like, nope, that didn't happen. And you can just kind of go back in time. I used that once on a mission because I didn't it was a dragon boss, so you fight with Celica, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this boss even does. And then it just deleted my healer on the first turn, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna do that again. Fucking Christ, Chives, we just had a break, and you didn't want to run around, and now that I'm back on the mic, you came over to talk. You silly goof.
Meow.
Yeah.
Meow, meow.
Silly goober.
Dark Deity.
Yeah, so with Dark Deity, there's changes that they made that they could have made because there's concessions that Fire Emblem has in its design to accommodate for the fact that it has permadeath. For instance, none of the characters except for the main character is really featured in the story in a lot of them. And the reason for that is because, the main character is the only one who you have to keep alive. So the writers of the story know that, okay, this is the character that, the story is focused on. So I'm going to write the story almost entirely around them. And the rest of the characters have dialogue that can be, removed or added in at any given time, but it doesn't matter if they're there or not. In Dark Deity, that's not a thing. The characters are always going to be there. Which means that you can write a story where all of them are really heavily involved. But for some fucking reason, they included 30 characters, even though only 14 of them can be playable on any given map.
Even the final map?
Yeah. So you never have a reason to replace them.
That's silly.
So they're never going to die, so you're never going to replace them from dying. But whenever you get a new one, their stats are always going to be tailor made to whatever class you choose for them, because they don't just start with a class in particular, you get to choose what it is. So in almost 100% of cases, when you choose the class for a character, if you choose the same class as something you already have, the new character will have better stats than the existing person who you've been working with. That's also partly because most of the characters you get in the beginning have generalist stat growths instead of specialized stat growths that would actually be useful for certain classes. So in a lot of cases, it feels these people I've spent 10 hours with so far, and I'm just going to throw them in the garbage bin because I got a direct replacement as soon as this new character joined the party. To me, that doesn't feel great. But yeah, it's just it feels like there's just so many characters, and there's not really a good reason for you to have them because no one dies. And that also means that there's too many characters to write the story around. The writers had to spend a shitload of time coming up with support conversations for all of these different characters. And I feel if you just had a smaller cast of characters that you used throughout the entire game, you become more attached to them. They could have a lot more nuance to their writing. They could have a bigger role in the story, and you could have better support conversations with all of them. And I feel that would have been a better direction to go in than to just say we got rid of permadeath because we don't like permadeath, and not update the rest of the design of the game to accommodate for the fact that there's no permadeath. So there's a bunch of concessions you don't need to make that Fire Emblem has made.
They could have just, instead of permadeath, they could have just been hey, he's out for that next, if he died or got downed essentially, one of the characters, then he has to skip that next match maybe, or the next.
So they do have a penalty for them dying. They take a permanent stat penalty, but I had some characters die in my fucking playthrough. They can lose any of their stats. It doesn't specifically target their best stats. So in a lot of cases, I had it target stats that didn't actually matter, and I was like, oh, fuck it, this doesn't matter. So, I mean, like, you have just as much of a chance of it targeting a stat you care about as you do a stat you don't care about on a character.
But, like, how much are we talking?
When it was an HP one, it was 5, but the characters, I want to say the characters probably have over 100 health by the time you get to the end game.
Wow.
So they have significantly more health than they do in Fire Emblem.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think on Ian's stream, the most I saw was, like,
60?
in the 40s? Or maybe it was the 60s?
60 is the high end for Fire Emblem characters. 40 to 50 is average.
Yeah.
I had one character, and he was, like, level 20 something, and he was approaching 100 HP. So I want to say that every character could probably have over 100 HP by the end of the campaign.
But do the enemies, like, hit harder, or to compensate for that? Or?
They have very high critical rates.
Ah.
Which is
Fun.
something that I didn't have as much of an issue with, but I feel like if I played through the entire game, I'd have a bigger issue with it than I did where I was in the game. The other stats usually took a penalty of like 2-ish. I feel like they were a lot more in line with... Try to stop with that. Leave my chair alone. I feel like they were a lot more in line with traditional Fire Emblem stats. So the HP was like the one that I felt like was really high, and everything else was kind of like, oh, this is like normal. But yeah, because of that, I especially feel like if you invested in just like making sure your characters had the most maximized speed to do double attacking, then that would be like the only feasible way to deal with those giant HP values. Speaking of, the weapon system is also like not my favorite thing in the world because there's 4 different choices you have for every character. Ostensibly, it's a weapon that does like really high damage, a weapon's got really high crit, a weapon really high accuracy, and a balanced weapon. In every single weapon's case, there is one particular type of weapon that will have a very low weight modifier, and that's important because the weight of a weapon is subtracted from your speed, and you don't want to have low speed. Any weapon that like doesn't reduce your speed by anything or reduces the speed by the lowest amount is automatically the best weapon of that particular class.
So speed is like whether you hit first, or is it speed also so like how far you go?
If you've got 5 more speed than somebody, then you attack them twice. So it effectively doubles your damage.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the best stat in the game.
Damn.
It's the only stat that fucking matters. So you don't want to do anything that will subtract your speed, because ideally you want to attack everybody twice so you do double the damage.
Always.
Or the other side of that is that you don't want to be so slow that you get attacked twice, because that's devastating.
Right.
Unless you have like such a high defensive value that they can't do any
meaningful damage.
Yeah, they just do no damage to you. Like if they attack you twice for like 2 damage, it's like, nah, that's not a big deal, right? Like you got attacked for 4 damage, woohoo, big deal. But if they're attacking you twice for like 30 damage, it's like, okay, that character's just about to get like their poop stomped in. They're going to turn from a character into a pile of mud.
Wonder bar.
Yeah, so I wasn't a huge fan of that because in every single case that meant that like there was one weapon type that was automatically the correct choice and everything else was garbage. Spoiler, the answer is almost never the critical weapon or the power weapon. It is almost always the accuracy or the balanced weapon. Look at a fucking weapon table to see how the weapon's weight stat increases over time, and you'll know which answer is the better choice for either of those. I think spears are the only thing where crit is the correct answer, but in like every other weapon's case, it's either the accuracy weapon or it's the balanced weapon. The power weapons are almost always just like they just have a fucking stupid amount of weight. It's like, oh, I can do a lot of damage in one hit, but like I'm never going to hit twice. And in fact, a lot of times the enemies are going to hit me twice, which is like this weapon type is useless outside of like the really, really early game. One of the things I did actually like about the game was I thought the art direction was really, really, really good. And I'm not just saying that because every single female in the game has boobs as big as their head. The character art is really well done. The artwork's really, really good. The sprite work is even better. Normally, I turn the battle animations off on these types of games. I thought the battle animations were done. They're snappy enough and they're like varied enough that it's entertaining to watch them, which is good because I did turn off the battle animations briefly to see if that part of the game was done well, and it's not. The fucking turns just basically play out, and then afterward you have to like look at what happened because there's no information that's actually like. I think in Fire Emblem, at least, it shows you like a little bar that shows like what the attack is, and it's like, okay, your person took this much, and you like did this much on the counterattack. And then on Advanced Wars, you can always see the unit's health on top of them. Same with
Yeah,
like Wargroove. So
there's always one in the corner. Like,
Yeah.
you got the 10
So
health,
you can always tell, like, okay, this unit attacked this unit, and this is what the outcome of that fight was. So it's not like a huge...
Dark Deity, you just have to like hover over every
Yeah.
ally and be like, oh, you're down to 1.
Yeah,
what the fuck?
You don't get to see any. It just like plays out the entire. So like enemies just like move, and it's like so it's really really quick, which is nice. But it doesn't give you any information, so you like lose all of that time going through each unit individually on your turn, trying to figure out like what the fuck even happened. I was like, okay, well, whatever. But like the battle animations are done well enough to. It's like, okay, I could feasibly get through the entire game if I with these on. It's just that the game wasn't. The game irritated me too much to the point where I was like, no, I'm done with this. The other thing is the fucking maps suck. They're so bad. The first few are like fine, but there's so many just like big open fucking nothings.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, is it just too open?
With like 40 or 50 fucking enemies, and all you do is you choose one spot on the map, you turtle there, and you just wait for the enemy to commit suicide against you. And that's stupid. I hate it. It's not fun. I don't care, Ian. You're wrong. That's not fun. So, yeah, I don't know. Go read Ian's review on Adventure Rules. I think .com. I'm not sure if it's .blog. Let me check really quickly. Go read Ian's review on adventurerules.blog. Then read my review on frostylite.ca, and you will get two very contrasting opinions. But I think in both of our cases, we explain where we're coming from and why we did or did not enjoy the experience in a way that people will walk away from that having a really well-rounded view of what the game is like and understand whether or not it's for them. That's Dark Deity in a nutshell. I did not have a great time with it. I don't know if you're starved for Fire Emblem content, maybe, but I would say that I think that you'd be better served downloading a fucking emulator and playing the older Fire Emblem games instead of playing this.
Actually, there's apparently a Nintendo rumor, that there's a Fire Emblem game coming out. That's like one of the old ones.
Oh, okay. I could see that.
I saw that in passing.
I hope that they don't do what they did with Echoes.
I mean, it'll be on the Switch.
Well,
so maybe it'll be looking... Well, okay. I didn't play Echoes, so...
My issue with Echoes was like everything in it is really, really well done. So like character art's great. They actually turned like all the side characters into legitimate characters, which is not a thing in the original game. I had to do research to figure this stuff out. But they left the maps the same. I have no idea why they left all of the missions and maps exactly the same. They're just big open nothings. So it's super fucking boring to play through them. So I got like bored of that after getting through, I want to say like 3/4 of the game because the story wasn't good enough to make me want to play through those dog shit maps. So yeah, it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake, guys, like, come on. If they remake another like older game, for the love of God, please fix the maps. There's no reason not to do it. Intelligent Systems knows how to make better map design than the garbage that's in those old games. Anyway, what's your first game, Jason?
All right. So, there's a bit to the story.
Okay.
So, Frosty has not been able to successfully purchase Dark Souls Remastered for a reasonable price because apparently Bandai Namco doesn't really realize that it should be on sale on Steam.
Real talk, I'm convinced they don't know what the SKU number for it is, and they keep putting the original game on sale instead of the old one, even though the original game is not listed on Steam anymore. I am 100% convinced that's what's happening.
That's actually a good theory.
Well, because like every other game,
they keep putting it into Steam, and then like they're just like, "What are you talking about?"
Every other fucking like they're like, "Oh, Dark Souls sale," and like every game except for the fucking remastered first game is on sale, and they don't have the original on Steam anymore. As far as I can tell, it's been delisted, so you can only get the remaster.
Which they like to do, yeah.
But like the remaster never goes on sale. I mean, like never goes. It wasn't on during a Bandai Namco sale. It wasn't on during a Dark Souls sale. And it wasn't on during the Steam Summer Sale. I'm convinced these fucking morons don't know what the number, like the app ID is, and they keep putting the old one on sale, even though it's not listed on the store, and they keep forgetting to put the fucking remastered one, because it never goes on sale. I am completely losing my goddamn mind that this game will not go on sale. I'm not paying $50 Canadian for it. I do not give a fuck.
And the one solution I had for him...
Oh, yeah, you found it on Humble.
...was from Humble
But
Bundle.
they were out of Steam keys because everyone else who wants to buy it on sale found the fucking Humble sale.
First,
yeah. And you only showed it to me in like the last couple of days, which, thank you for showing it to me. That was very thoughtful of you.
I got an email about it, and I was just like, oh my god, he can finally buy it. And then you just sent me, what the fuck?
I went to the fucking store page and then sent you like, what the fuck? Because it's just like, it says like, oh, we're out of Steam keys. I'm like, how you out of digital keys for a fucking, what?
Anyway, the long and short of this is Dark Souls 3 was on sale. I don't know if you ever picked it up, but it'll be on sale at some point later on.
No, I did
was
not.
Like, oh, you know what? I'll see if that one's something I can recommend, because I could recommend Dark Souls Remastered. I haven't played enough of Dark Souls 2, and there's some changes in there that I'm not really gelling with 100%, so I'd say that was a pass, but I wanted to try 3, because a lot of people say that 3 was good, because it kind of included a bit of stuff from all the games that they've done, so like Dark Souls and then Bloodborne, so it's a bit faster paced. They've learned from a lot of their mistakes. There's actually some color to the world, especially from the original Dark Souls,
which is fucking
not the remastered one.
Gray and brown.
Which is just gray and brown, and then flames. That's about it. So yeah, played Dark Souls 3. I'm not through all of it yet, but I've beaten 9 of the bosses. This time, because I've tried it once before, it's going very, very well. I think one boss killed me like 2 times before I beat him, and that's been about it. Most of the enemies I've been able to defeat. Let's just say one boss, it was one of the earlier ones, but I somehow equipped a bad weapon, so I was doing half the damage that I should have been doing. And of course, since you can't really pause in a Dark Souls game, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to try this for the rest of the battle. I got him down to like 3/4 of his health before he killed me, and I was just like, okay, let's try that again with the right weapon equipped, and destroyed him.
You are a fucking Dark Souls geek chad now.
Potentially. I haven't beaten the rest of the bosses, but they're not giving me nearly as much trouble. I'd say just kind of getting from point A to point B is the more of the difficult part in the game. You know how like Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, sometimes getting to the boss was almost more of a challenge than the boss. Occasionally.
I feel like most of the bosses had like a Buddhist checkpoint guy in front of them, but
yeah, it does help.
There was a few that were like, oh, I gotta like get past this one enemy that's kind of a pain in the ass, I think.
Oh yeah, that was one thing I wanted to mention. Unlike Dark Souls, the original Dark Souls, yeah, the checkpoints are much nicer in this one.
I was gonna say, isn't Dark Souls 3 also like notoriously fast-paced as well, so that the checkpoint system kind of had to be nicer because the game's a lot less forgiving?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
I don't actually know I know a lot about Dark Souls, surprisingly, considering I've never played it, but I don't know as much about Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 3. A lot of people like to talk about Dark Souls, so I've seen a number of different videos on it for different subjects, but
there's enough variety in the environments, much like Dark Souls, the original one had. Then this one, I think it's done a bit better. Like, in one I was in a city, the next I was in a swamp that was poisonous.
Then I was in a city that was on top of a swamp.
And then, like, the last area I've been in is really this, like, kind of frozen area, which is kind of nice. Beat the boss in this chapel. I have a video that I need to eventually post. That was pretty funny.
Is it the Boreal Queen in the frozen chapel?
Boreal Dancer. I've not fought the Boreal Dancer yet.
Oh, okay.
There's this one that looks kind of pig-like or beast-like. I beat that one. That's like the second boss. They're another Boreal one.
Okay.
But they're early game. No, there's a Dancer. I've heard that one's a pretty tough fight.
Yeah,
so I haven't gone there yet.
That fight is apparently a huge cunt, so it's probably the Snorlax and Pikachu of Dark Souls 3.
Perfect. Just what I want. That's a lot.
At least it's one-on-one.
That's true. In this one, they have different builds, so I've kind of gone with a physical build for this playthrough. You can also put a lot more into like magics. This one just has MP and stuff, so they have your Estus flasks. Instead of just healing your HP, you can set them so that they heal like your magic.
Oh, so if you're doing like a more magic-centric build and you're going for like a no-hit Chad kind of thing, you could just set it so that they regenerate your magic and just blast the...
Instead of the health. Yeah.
Okay, that's neat.
You go to the blacksmith and he can change that for you. At first I didn't even know what the hell they were talking about, because I was like, oh, I have this special Estus flask for magic, I guess. I wasn't using it because I just had a physical build.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, oh, I can change those on kind of the fly. So if I did have like a build, or if I did need like, let's say, half magic, half health, that's useful for that kind of
So you were able
build.
to change that Estus Flask over to healing for health then?
Oh yeah, and I changed it once I figured that out.
Okay.
So I was one lower for probably the first 6 bosses before I realized, oh, that was an extra Estus Flask.
The true chat Jason doesn't need all the resources to finish Dark Souls bosses.
This is true. I don't think I've actually used all my Estus Flasks in a single fight. It's a little bit easier to get extra Estus Flasks because you get the shards, and then you can craft a new one, so adding to your total. Because it's a little weird in Dark Souls, because you get 5 from, and I think it's like a non-kindled fire, and if you get a kindled fire, it's like 10 Estus Flasks. Though you can increase the potency of those Estus Flasks. I think you can do that in 3 as well. So they just made it a lot more fun with the healing, since the enemies do hit quite a bit harder. Much like the other Dark Souls games, as long as you kind of take your time to kind of learn what they're doing, like the bosses are doing, especially for that first run, then you'll probably be fine. I want to say there's been 2 gimmick bosses. I'm just going to look them up in a second. Yorm the Giant. He's got this weapon that's in the boss's room that you have to grab and then equip. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening in my first playthrough, because he will not take any damage.
Oh, that's stupid.
It's a special 2-handed weapon that if you power it up, it has the ability to hit him and then like pretty much electrocute him, which will then take a huge chunk of his health. So he's kind of like a gimmick boss. But without knowing that, it's kind of hard to know that. But since it's the only item in the room that you can like pick up, it's kind of obvious that this is necessary for this fight.
So walk into the room, there's a sword in the middle of the room. I wonder if I need to use this.
Well, actually, the sword is on his throne behind him, so you have to get around him first.
Teleports behind you, nothing personnel, kid.
Yeah. Oh, and the Deacons of the Deep. So this is just a bunch of like enemies that are basically like almost kind of a cult group, but only one of them is possessed by like the boss.
Oh.
So you have to like fight through a bunch of them in order to hit the one that actually will take off the boss's health. And then like in his second phase, he fucking destroyed me the first time because I didn't realize he was...
That sounds supremely stupid.
What?
Just, it's the one guy marked?
Yeah, he's in red.
Oh, okay. So at least you know what you're working towards.
Which one. Everything is telegraphed very easily to the player. It's like you got to figure that out, and then after that, pretty straightforward. I only had to try it one more time after that.
That makes sense.
Oh, he petrified me. That was the thing, and then that ends the fight.
Oh,
unfortunately, if you get the petrified status,
yeah,
you just end.
That sounds like something Dark Souls would do. You could turn to stone. You're dead now. Okay.
I think the first time I played Dark Souls 1, that was the thing that put me off, because in that one, you actually have to get an item to undo the half health that you now have after that.
Oof.
In 3, they don't have that, because I have gotten petrified twice.
Basically paralyzed.
More or less. So 3 is a lot easier in that regard. Unlike in Dark Souls 1, where you have humanity, you have like this ember, which basically means like kind of kilned. And you can get a little bit more health if you're embered in that status. So every time that you defeat a boss, you get the embered status back because you've been essentially like a Lord of Embers, or you just get a small health boost. That's kind of really it. Or if you have the many, many embers that are scattered around there, you can use one, then you get the embered status back if you die. So if you need a small boost before a boss, you can do that. It was kind of the same in Dark Souls 1, except I think humanity just healed you. I don't know, I haven't actually used the ember yet. In a boss fight, so it might heal you, I don't know. Anyway, what's next for you?
On the basis of patterns, we'll go with Enter the Gungeon. As I was kind of alluding to, I think I outright said it earlier, it is one of the hardest fucking games I have ever played. It is like unreasonably difficult.
It really is. I've tried it like 3 or 4 times. It's tough.
Yeah, it's a motherfucker, but it's fun. I have been playing that, keeping in mind that I will probably never finish a run. That's how I was kind of approaching it.
I haven't.
So I didn't want to go in and being like, oh yes, I will beat this. Because like I went in thinking that with like Hades, and like for the first 20-ish hours of Hades, it's like very difficult to finish a run. But then I like finally did. And I felt like the first like 20 hours of that game were a little bit really discouraging. So I'm like, oh man, this is like actually like bullshit hard levels. But then when you start to figure out the game, it goes from being bullshit hard levels to like I finished a fucking Heat 32 run in Hades. So, you know, like
Yeah, you were Chad.
yeah, it's just it took a really long time, but like to get to that point. So with Gungeon, obviously not at that point. I just started playing it, so it's very challenging. I won't say I'm like the premier best bullet hell player, and that's kind of what the game. It's like bullet hell roguelike. Having said that, yesterday I got to Zone 5 for the first time, which is the final zone. And I did one run before we started recording, and I got to Zone 5 on that run as well. So I didn't make it to the final boss in either of those runs, but I did make it to Zone 5. So I'm getting there. A big part of getting better at Gungeon comes from learning all of the enemy attack patterns so that you understand what the best way to deal with them is whenever you're in a room with them. In a lot of ways, the kind of things that I'm learning remind me of Hades. Although in Hades, I feel like once you get enemy patterns down, there's a lot of nuance and strategy that come in with how you're going to do your build in a particular run. And I feel like in Gungeon, there's a lot more luck on that front.
Well, it's because of the weapons that you get.
Yeah,
right?
so I feel like the big determining factor in whether or not I can make it past like the third area in a run is entirely dependent on if I find a really good gun. If I find a gun that's like kind of workable, then I can 100% of the time I can make it to Zone 4.
Returnal has that same problem from what I've read, where it's like whatever that is your starting stuff. Like if you get a really good gun, if you get a really good build out of your character, then you might not have so many problems for like the first and second boss, and then how many ever there are. But there's a problem with that where people are like, I just got the shittiest setup, so I was unable to proceed.
So
like for past the first boss.
With 2 of the 4 starting characters, I can 100% of the time beat the first boss, regardless of what items I get on the first floor.
Nice.
So with the Marine, who is like arguably the best character, he's like the most balanced character. The rest of the characters have like way more swing to how much randomness will make their runs make or break, but the Marine's very static. He's very easy to play. I can beat the first boss without getting hit using his starting pistol. The without getting hit is a big important thing, and I'm going to get into why that is in a little bit. But yeah, once I get to the second floor, I have to find something. And if I don't find something, then it's like, okay, this run is fucked. The first time I made it to Zone 4, I had a shotgun that charmed enemies, and that was fantastic. Yesterday when I got to Zone 5, I very early on got a shotgun that caused poison. So one of the things that makes the Marine so good is that he increases the effective range on all of the weapons because they have increased accuracy while he's using them. So shotguns do not have to be used from point blank range. You can use them from kind of like a medium, like a mid-screen range on stuff, and it will still hit the target. So I was using this fucking poison shotgun from like mid-screen most of the time. So it was like very safe to use, but very powerful. It did a ton of work for me. And yeah, like I said, I got to Zone 5 with that and promptly died because I was facing a bunch of new enemies. And I was like, I don't know how any of their fucking attack patterns work. And then today I got the Meat Boy gun, which just fires off saws that bounce everywhere. Not very good against enemies, so I still had to go through like the entire floor using sometimes the fucking starting weapon, which wasn't very fun. But when I got to the bosses, it's basically just hold down the fire button and then reload and then hold down the fire button again, and the entire room would fill up with saw blades and the bosses just got melted.
Nice. Have you gotten the gun that's like shoots bullets?
Yes.
But in word form?
Yes, I've gotten the one that shoots bullet. That one I got toward the end of one of my better runs. I also got the bullet that fires guns that fire bullets. That gun's very fun.
I don't think I've seen that one before.
There's like a lot of
awesome.
Very fun weapons in this game. There's also a ton of just dog shit useless ones. The fucking
yeah.
Cupid bow is the worst fucking piece of shit. Holy fuck. The crossbow that the Huntress starts with is also pretty worthless after the first floor. The sawed-off shotgun is fucking dog shit. And I'm not a big fan of any of the weapons where you have to like hold them and charge them, because I find them very irritating to use on mouse, because I just like expect to like click the, left click and fire. But with the charge weapons, you gotta like hold it down, and I'm like, I really don't like doing this. So like the cannonball, at least that one does a lot of damage, so I don't mind it as much. But like the fucking Winchester's dot, I don't like it because you have to do the charging on it. There's some other gun I forgot the name of that you have to fucking charge before you fire, and I don't like that one either. But yeah, so like a big thing with this is like you go through and it's bullshit hard, but as you learn the fucking attack patterns of the enemies, it becomes increasingly more manageable. Like I've gotten to the point now where I can more reliably get through the first and second boss without taking a hit, provided I have a half decent weapon so the fight doesn't last forever, because I run out of like mental stamina eventually. And a big why that's important is because Gungeon is like, it helps you snowball into success. So if you do not take a hit against a boss, you get an extra heart.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Fundamentally, you have to get good at beating the bosses without taking hits. And as you get better and better and better at doing that, not only are you going to be better at dodging all of the boss's attacks, but you're going to get better at dodging all of the enemies on the floor's attacks. And then you're going to be getting through floors perfectly or almost perfectly every single time. And when that happens, that's where you start to get into those later floors, because it's like, okay, well, I have like 4 health going into, and like the Marine starts off with a piece of armor. So it's like, oh, I have like 4 health and a piece of armor going into floor 2. And then after floor 2, it's like, okay, I finished floor 2 and I have 5 health now. So then it's like, okay, it's like floor 3 and floor 4 and floor 5 are a lot more manageable when you have like a surplus of health. So you're not like immediately on the back foot, right? But yeah, the game is designed in such a way where like you do not have the ability to take hits very often, and you do not get heals very often. It is very, very punishing. Fundamentally, when you hit the point where you can actually reliably finish runs is when you are able to go through and dodge like 99% of the attacks that are coming at you. That's like the only way you can actually finish the fucking game.
How long would it take you to get to like Zone 5?
All my Zone 5 runs, I'm up to 40 minutes.
Okay.
So I think a full run would clock in it under an
About
hour.
an hour.
I feel like depending on the weapons you get, that could be better or worse.
No, it's a good runtime.
With some of the weapons, it becomes a little bit faster, and some of the weapons would be a little bit slower, but fundamentally, I feel like you're looking at around 50-ish minutes to 55 minutes for a full run, if you're, like, not a Giga Chad. Despite the fact that it's, like, super fucking hard, it's still, like, really fun to play, and I've obviously been improving at it over the course of the last couple weeks. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I don't know if I'll ever finish a run. I don't know if I'll finish a run with multiple characters. I don't know if I'll unlock any of the secret characters, because apparently there's secret characters. But it is a very fun game to play if you go in not thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to like finish this game. Or if you just like love bullet hells. I imagine this game would just be like the bee's knees. It's got a lot of fun enemy designs. It's got a lot of very fun like referential stuff as far as the guns work. Some of the guns are also jokes. I think one of the coolest aspects actually is some of the weapons combine to make them stronger. So like when you get 2 weapons that like synergize, I'm using air quotes, they'll improve one of the weapons. So like for example, there's a boat gun that fires off boats. And when you get the ice cube gun, the boat gun is powered up so that it fires off Titanics instead of boats.
Nice.
Or
I don't think I ever got that far in that game.
Well, it's something you'll just randomly stumble upon. Or I had the passive that made me resistant to fire. And then when you get the passive that makes you resistant to fire, if you pick up the ant gun, so like normally the ant gun fires off bullets that spread oil, and then when you reload, you turn the ant around and you start shooting fireballs out of its butt. Basically, you shoot oil all over the fucking floor and then you light it on fire, but you can light yourself on fire. But if you get the fire resistance thing, it's like, okay, this naturally synergizes with the fire ant, but it goes a step further. The game actually just makes it so that the fire ant gun will just start shooting giant fireballs everywhere that will just like light the entire fucking floor on fire and explode. So it becomes even more volatile when you have the ability to no longer take damage from it, which is fucking hilarious. So like that's another example of like a really like, it's like, oh, this is really neat thing that can come up. And there's like a ton of references. All of the main characters you start off with are like references to some kind of pop culture type thing. The Marine is like a very obvious Doom guy reference. The pilot is like a Han Solo
Yes.
reference. The Huntress is based on like a character from one of Clint Eastwood's Western movies, and I had to look up the Convict because I wasn't sure what she was from. I already forgot the name of it, but it's some like mafia film where there's like a betrayal and one of the syndicate bosses gets like betrayed by somebody and then they get sent to jail. Yeah, and there's like apparently some other characters to unlock, but I haven't figured out how to unlock them yet. I've said this numerous times in this recording, but yeah, go into it expecting that it's gonna just kick your fucking teeth in and just shit on your fucking sandwich. It is not a very friendly game. It is not an easy game. It is an excruciatingly difficult game, but it's still fun in spite of that.
Nice.
On to you, Jason.
All right. Well, this is the shitty game. It's Mafia 2 Definitive Edition. It was on sale after I played Mafia, and I was like, I haven't played Mafia 2 in forever, since like 2013. Let me give this a whirl. And I did know going in that the port was not very good, but I was curious at how bad it was. The frame rate is just all over the place, especially with the driving segments, not with the shooting segments, which is nice.
I thought I noticed that in the recording, and I wasn't sure if it was just because you were recording, but it looked like it was stuttering in the 2 videos you posted yesterday at parts.
Yes, it was. It's all over the place. Sometimes you'll get into a crash and then it'll just be like, it'll go down to like 15 frames or something like that, I'd guess. And then it'll climb back up because I don't know, it's having difficulty like putting in all the textures and stuff, especially when you're driving super fast. Like it gets super noticeable, which I do not remember this being a problem with the original, which I played on the PS3. I don't know if it was a problem on like PC per se, but I doubt it. But yeah, no, it was just not a good port. So here are the good things. I enjoy the story. I enjoy the characters and their interactions and stuff. And overall, the missions are varied enough, much like in the first, where I've seen the plot through. That is good. And the bad, as I've started mentioning, has been that the port is just not a good one.
It runs like ass.
Yeah, there is just an insane amount of texture pop-in constantly. And I just don't feel like the team really understood all that they were doing because they ported it to a different team to do this. So the first one was a complete overhaul. The second one was just a HD thing. And then the third one, they just combined the DLC, I believe.
Also, the second one is like the worst kind of fucking remaster. Like
the second one is the worst kind of remaster.
The fuck you give us your money remaster.
Yeah. A lot of it had to do with just the fact that I wanted to kind of play the DLC, which I don't think I had ever done. I don't really remember it, at least. But yeah, it's just not a good one. They've got these collectibles, these wanted posters, and something that's apparently different from the original to this one is they've added 30 new ones. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that those collectibles are just like developers who kind of got into like a little costume for the wanted posters. So I collected them, and I'm going like, these are the new ones, because I can tell, based off the camera quality, that that's much better than that one from 2013 or something, or not even 2013, from like 2010, 2011. Huh. So it's immediately noticeable, and I'm looking at these going like, you do realize that this was not a finished product. There's a lot of things in here that do not work. You saw that video I posted where the car just fell over.
I thought that was pretty funny, especially with the fucking X-Files music you put on top of it.
Well, that's what it was. It was just, I stopped and I looked and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, it was the first time that happened.
I think the one that really was, I think, more indicative of the point you're trying to make, though, was the second one, where like it was like a trailing mission.
I think that was actually a problem in the original, but like it happened twice, at least here, when I'm just like in a row.
Yeah, where you're like trailing and the guy stops and you stop moving and it's like, you've been seen, and it's like, what?
No, it wasn't even that he was been seen. His vehicle was blocked by the NPCs, so he got into a crash the first time because he.
Oh, is that what happened? It didn't look like a crash. It just looked like he stopped moving.
No, he crashed into another vehicle, and then he got out and was like, what the fuck's the matter with you?
Oh.
And then, because he did that, the game was like, you've not followed him to the location.
What
and I'm like,
the fuck?
What the fuck? And then the next time, I don't even know what happened the second time. I think he just rear-ended someone, and then he just stopped, and I was just like, are you shitting me? I can't get through this mission again. So what the fuck?
That's so fucking ass.
Yeah, the NPCs were just screwing me over. I don't know if that's the problem with just the remaster, if that was just a problem with the design in general.
I can't imagine having to do a fucking trailing mission, the worst kind of mission, 3 times because twice it fucked up on the game side of things.
Yeah,
That
no,
is-
that was the third one. And there's a small shootout with the enemies at that point. There's only like 4 of them, but still. Yeah, that was actually another point I wanted to make. The checkpoints are not very forgiving in some regards. So there's one mission where you have to like sell all these gas stamps for money because you've stolen them. But anyway, I sold them and I thought there was a checkpoint, and so I was goofing around like trying to go like super fast, and like my character died, and it put me all the way back to reselling all of them, even though I had finished that whole task. So the checkpoint system is so broken. So I had to do it again. That's like a 10-minute task to go around the map and do that. I'm like, are you fucking
Sorry, I'm
serious?
just like picturing your character dies, and then it's like and it like does the fucking Majora's Mask thing where it sends you back. Like
Pretty
that's
much.
the animation is, and then like fucking like Link wakes up at the beginning of Ocarina of Time. It's like you gotta play through the entirety of like Ocarina of Time
began and again.
before fucking getting to Mafia. Like, I know that makes no sense. That's what I've just pictured in my head. Like, this is goddamn.
The checkpoints. That didn't make any sense. They didn't fix that in the new one. This game needed the same amount of love that 1 did, but
Evidently, it didn't receive it.
it did not receive it because it was good enough. Whereas if you released the 2001 Mafia today
Holy shit
on
balls.
consoles, it would look like shit. So
Not just that, it would
I get the decision, but
probably wouldn't run that well either.
no, probably wouldn't have.
Well, that is unfortunate. Did you at least get the two of them bundled together, or did you buy them? Why did you buy them? Why did you play these games?
Well, Mafia was good other than the simulation driving, which 2 has, but you can have that turned off no matter the difficulty, so it gets a pass on that. Thank God. But no, Mafia 1's fine. It's a good game. Mafia 2, I mostly just wanted to play the DLC, which I haven't gotten to fully yet, so there's that. I never got that in the original, so I was like, oh, why not? It does look much sharper, but that's just because it's an HD remaster, so that's the standard for all PS3 games to PS4.
Yeah, but fundamentally.
So nothing special there. Yeah, nothing else to really talk about on that, so let's move on.
Okay, final game for my side of things, mostly because I'm omitting a few games that I played, is Deep Rock Galactic. It is a 4-player cooperative shooter. Yeah, let's go with that. Well, so you shoot, that's like the primary way you interact with the game, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily completely focused on shooting. So you play as one of 4 dwarves who is employed by this like tyrannical, super like late capitalism mining company. And you go down to planets on various missions and you complete whatever it is that is your objective. There's, I think, about 8 different types of mission objectives you can have, and the maps are procedurally generated, but they have different planets which can create different hazards. So like one of them is a sand planet that has sandstorms that make it impossible to see anything when sandstorms are going. There's an ice planet where you can get frozen. There's a fire planet which constantly does damage to you if you're standing in lava or you get hit by fiery things. There's one that has like nuclear fucking crystals everywhere. I hate that one.
Do you take like radiation damage?
Yeah,
or?
you take a fuckload of radiation damage whenever you get even remotely near those stupid cunts.
I already remember how annoying that is for Fallout. That just sounds blech.
It's just damage, but it's still like, ugh. There's one that's always just dark, which I hate as well because I can never see anything.
Can't just like increase the brightness just to get around that?
No, I would. So here's the thing. You have glow sticks that you can kind of throw out that randomly recharge. It's just annoying to have to like wait for them to recharge because you literally can't see anything on this fucking planet without throwing out some glow sticks. So the thing that's so like smart about the way that this game is designed is that it is designed in such a way where you can play it with as few or as many people as you want. So like you can play with just by yourself or you can play with up to 4 people together.
Does it populate with the AI?
No, it doesn't, but it still works. The game still works. They've balanced everything with like a fine-tooth comb while it was in early access. So it like works if you're alone, it works if you're with a group of 2, it works if you're with a group of 3, and it works if you're with a group of 4. It never feels like the challenge you're up against is overwhelming. It always feels like the right difficulty based on the number of people you have, which is really, really, really good. The other thing that's really unique about it is there's 4 different classes, and usually in class-based stuff, it's designed in such a way where you kind of like need everyone. Every single class in this game is not required, but having them always makes things better. None of the classes are essential, But whenever you have them, you're like, oh, hey, there's like, you have these unique abilities that you can offer the team, which makes certain things easier to do. This is awesome. They've chosen abilities that synergize really well together, but the characters on their own always feel good enough to be usable by themselves, which I think is a really, really interesting thing from like a balance and design perspective. Because there's not many times where you see a multiplayer cooperative game where regardless of who's playing what and where you are, like all of the characters, usually it's done in such a way where you either like don't need anyone because everyone has the same abilities, or like you need everyone, and without everyone it sucks because you're like lacking certain things. Like MMOs, you need like the typical formation is like 2 damage, 1 tank, 1 healer. And then in like games like Destiny, you don't need anyone because everyone is equally viable because everyone's just a damage class. Or Maple Story, everyone's just a fucking damage class.
Very true.
But in like this, everyone has a little like a damage based ability, so they're not defenseless. And then each of them have their own unique traversal based ability. So like each of them has the ability to traverse the level you're in, but when you combine those abilities, they become even like better, and it becomes even easier to traverse things, which makes everyone feel really useful whenever you bring them in, but like none of the classes feel essential. There's one which is like the Scout, and the Scout doesn't have any movement-based abilities that they can offer, but they can stick a glow stick to the walls instead of just like whipping out glow sticks. So they can effectively like hit the top of a cavern with a glow stick and light up the entire area for everyone else, which is like, oh, that's like super useful. The engineer can put down these platforms that make getting to some like higher minerals that are like higher in the wall easier because you can just like climb up to them, or it can make certain areas that the gunner has built zip lines to a lot easier to land on. The gunner, as I just said, has zip lines that they can set up that people can use to traverse areas, like longer spaces. And then the miner, the driller, I think it's the driller is the class's name, has these 2 like honking drills that can just tear through terrain. So like instead of having to traverse the outside of terrain, the driller can just like make pathways through the walls to certain things. When you have a full stack of people, you have like all of these abilities that are very useful, but when you don't have like all the people around, it's like you don't feel like you're missing something, because it's like, oh, there's like these things that are really like, they're great to have, but they're not essential, I guess is the thing I'm trying to say. It's very interesting to me how they've designed things in such a way that like all of the abilities feel really, really good to have, but you don't feel crippled when you don't have them. That's, from a design perspective, really neat. The game itself is very fun to play, even if it's super duper grindy. Like I said, you fundamentally go on missions to collect resources, and then you come back to your base and you use those resources to upgrade your shit, and then you go on new missions. The fun of the game is supposed to be just going on the missions and surviving.
Is there an end goal?
Not really.
Okay.
You have to play through like kind of a quasi story at the start. Fundamentally, that just teaches you what all the mission types are and shows you like all of the locations. And once the game is entirely based around the fundamental loop of like going out, doing a mission, getting loot, coming back, upgrading your shit, and then going out and doing a new mission. Like, it's just, the gameplay loop is that simple.
Gotcha.
So like the story, air quotes, is just about, fundamentally it's just a tutorial that takes you through all of the mission types and all of the planets. And then when you finish that, you unlock the ability to take on assignments. They're like, I guess, quests where you have to complete certain types of missions, and then you unlock some new stuff. Fundamentally, this is like grinding the game, but the gameplay loop is so satisfying that it doesn't feel like it's grinding.
The best kind of grinding for you then.
Yeah. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I've been playing with Will, Miranda, Chris, I guess myself. I'm the 4th person there. I was saying that list like it was going to have 4 people in it. So we've done like various different group sizes on missions, and I did play one mission on my own. Yeah, it's like very, very fun to just play through. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I've actually had like the most fun just playing with Miranda because we work really well as a team, which isn't necessarily true when Chris and Will are around, which is a little bit unfortunate because the levels are a lot more, they throw a lot more shit at you when there's 4 of you there.
No, like, that makes sense because it's trying to compensate for that.
Yeah. So it'll throw like more alien bugs at you while you're mining for your whatever your objective is. But yeah, whenever Miranda and I are playing, I found that things went actually a lot faster and a lot smoother because we were working together and actually communicating. Although I feel like a lot of times whenever Miranda and I are playing games, I just end up bossing her around. But I don't know if she'd disagree with this, but I feel like she actually likes having somebody take firm leadership, like say, hey, here's what we're doing, do this. And she's like, okay, and she'll do that. And then I fucking do whatever the fuck. And then whenever information comes in that like she knows something that I don't know, she's like, oh, hey, so-and-so. And I'm like, okay, that's like, now we need to switch to do this then. It's like, okay. Instead of when there's like a group of us and it's like trying to like tell Chris or Will what to do, Will just doesn't listen and Chris just tells you to fuck yourself. So
Chaos.
yeah, Sejos for sure. That's like Deep Rock Galactic. I probably haven't done a great job of selling the game. It's very fun to play, even if it's very grindy. There's like enough shootery type stuff in it that I am having fun, but then like Miranda's playing the driller and she just spends like a lot of time digging out the minerals that we need for, or like working on the objectives while I'm usually playing the gunner defending point. So I get to spend like a lot of time shooting things, which I find that more fun. And she gets to spend more time like focusing on the objectives of stuff. We've both been having a lot of fun with it, even though, you know, like I've said before, like a big problem with us with trying to find like games we can play together is we fundamentally like different types of games, but this has offered stuff that both of us can kind of enjoy. Chives, leave my headset alone. No.
Are you using the spray bottle?
Not yet, but I will be. No. No. No.
Is that a wrap on that game?
You can edit that part out. I'm just having a stare down with my cat. She's attacking my chair and then my fucking headset and then me. I'm trying to turn...
Triple whammy.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn no into a fucking word where she knows she's done something wrong.
Word that means something.
Yeah, well, I saw a thing online. It's like when your cat's doing something, just choose a word, any word, and you can change it. I was going to use potato, but I started using no earlier today, so I obviously didn't make potato the
I mean, no
word.
is the easiest word. I guess you can switch to potato again if no doesn't work.
No, it's not a matter of word. It's just a consistency thing. So every time she does something I don't want her to do, I just need to say it with a firm tone, and she'll know that like that's something that I don't want her to do. At the same time, I'm also trying to teach her her name by calling her name every time I am feeding her. So she doesn't have to, she'll just think it means food, but that means it'll get her attention, and that's all I care about. So anyway, so that's like fundamentally it with Deep Rock Galactic.
Anyway, with that is the end of our show this week. Thank you all for joining us. You can follow this podcast on Stitcher, Spotify,
Spoofy,
or on Anchor. I don't know why every time that gets me. I don't know why. I expect it, but I
killed your flow there.
Yes. Anyway, you can not follow me. Anyway, your stuff.
What do you mean not follow you? Do your stuff. What are you doing?
No, I'm changing it up.
Okay. For my stuff, you can follow me on Twitter at FrostyLight. That's where everything goes out. If you want to see specific things for my blog stuff, just go read frostylight.ca or Google search frostylight.ca. I got a lot of good stuff on there. I got some good articles coming out next few weeks. The big one, as I already said from this week, was the Dark Deity review. And you should read that, and you should also read Ian's review on adventurerules.blog, because it'll give you a really balanced perspective about what the game is all about, and if you will enjoy it. And next week, I will hopefully have an article out about them's fighting herds in regard to its combo trainer and why that's fucking awesome. For art stuff, you can go to Instagram. That's at FrostyLight. I haven't posted jack shit there in a really long time because I haven't been doing art, but maybe that will change in a bit when I have some motivation to do art again. For Twitch stuff, actually I'm not live streaming right now. I'm FrostyLight on that. You can follow me if you want to. I haven't been live streaming for the last few months. I don't know if I'm going to get back into that at all. But yeah, so go read my fucking blog. That's the thing I pour the most energy into.
Anyway, with that, that's the end of our show. Thanks for all for listening, and stay frosty.